Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the latest installation of the Senturus Knowledge Series. Today, we'll be covering the topic, 5 data integration options for Microsoft Power BI. Our agenda today, we'll go through a few quick introductions, and we'll do a brief high-level BI analytics architecture overview, and we'll get into the heart of the presentation, discussing data integration options for Power BI. Afterwards, we'll go through a brief Senturus overview for those of you who may not be familiar with our organization and our expertise, some great additional free resources, and then we'll get to the always informative aforementioned Q&A. So by way of introduction, I'm pleased to be joined today by my colleague, Andy Kinnear and John Peterson. John is our company's founder and CEO, as well as a thought leader and visionary. He directs the delivery of all projects here at Senturus, providing the bridge between technical and business understanding. We're pleased to have him here today on a cameo appearance. And I'm also joined by Andy Kinnear, who is a certified Microsoft BI architect and a developer with over 20 years of experience in software development. He's made regular appearances at the Power Platform World Tour events over the years, and also serves as assistant organizer of the New Jersey, New York branch of the Power BI users group. He's a wealth of knowledge on the Microsoft stack, as you'll soon see for yourself. My name is Michael Weinhauer. I'm a director here at Senturus, and among my many responsibilities, I'm pleased to be the host of these webinars. So with that, I'm going to hand the microphone over to Mr. Peterson for a quick overview of BI system architecture. John, go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Mike. And thank you very much for allowing me to shoehorn myself into what will be a nice, rich presentation by Andy. I wanted to take the opportunity, first of all, to thank all of the folks attending today and any folks that are listening to this at a later date. The exciting thing for me about this, Mike, is what I'm looking toward is a series of webinars where we talk about the different elements of the architecture, typical architectures of BI and analytics systems. As most of the folks know, I noticed a number of very familiar names on our attendee panel. We've been doing webinars on all different types of topics at all different types of levels. And one of the areas that is always a very popular one is what are the different pieces of enterprise level BI architecture? What are the architectural options to put those together? What are the tools that could be put toward them? And if anything, over the 20 years we've been doing this type of work, it has just become more and more complex in terms of the number of different ways and tools that you can put this together. But it all really comes down to a basic flow, and that's what's on the screen right now, which is the universal rule is that you want more data to make better decisions and take actions in your business, but the data that typically is out there is hard to get, impossible to really make sense of, oftentimes massive volumes, all sorts of issues with it. So universally, you need to do something to it. You need to grab it. You need to do something to it in order to get it into these tools. The nice thing is that these modern self-service tools like Power BI, like Tableau, can allow you to actually fulfill this entire chain within the tool. However, there's a big caveat. That's typically, your mere mortals can usually do that at the desktop level and maybe at the department level. But by the time you actually try and roll that out to the enterprise level, you face an extraordinarily large number of additional issues. And those issues come down to a basic set of things, such as like performance, large data volumes, data validity. How can I trust that? What's a single source of truth if everybody has their own data model? How do I apply security to this so it's not getting in the wrong hands? How do I automate a process? So when Joe is out on vacation, the dashboards refresh the next day. How do I create reliable and robust processes in this chain of events? Maintainability, What if people leave? How do I actually scale it to add new additional information? Things like source control, monitoring, and you end up quickly getting back to some of the, the enterprise level systems like the next slide, Mike, where we've been doing work for 20 years. Sorry, this is a little bit busy, but it captures everything. This presentation is available for download. I'm not going to talk to the gory detail, but the essence is you've got a bunch of source systems. The more data you can pull in, the richer your data set is for making decisions. You typically use some form of tool to integrate that data into usually some form of repository. Modern systems allow you to do direct connections, and Andy's going to speak to an aspect of the Power BI platform that allows you to do that. But more typically, you're staging the data in intermediate repositories for a number of reasons that we talk about in other webinars, and then you apply tools on top of it to make sense of it and deliver it to the various usage points. So that's the broader piece. What we're going to focus on today are the data integration tools. And if we go to the next slide, we're going to break it down to basically connecting to various types of data, preparing that data, combining that data. We have other webinars that we've delivered. In fact, Mike delivered one on data modeling with Power BI relatively recently. We just delivered a Snowflake webinar, what was it, last week, talking about how you might options for storing the data. And we're going to continue to enrich the Senturus offerings for both webinars, training, and delivery services to include the entire chain of events required here. And so I wanted to just set the stage for where this sits. The last thing I'll say is that Andy will show you a series of tools. Each one is aimed at solving a different part of this problem. And the key is to understand what you're trying to do, what are the available options, how they might fit together. We are going to focus solely on the Microsoft platform in this webinar. There are a myriad of other options from other vendors, and oftentimes we work in hybrid environments. But today's discussion will be specific to the Microsoft platform, which is gaining significant traction. The benefits are they've got a lot of different options. The challenge is determining which one to use. And hopefully by the end of today's webinar, Andy will give you some tips on which might be the most appropriate tool or set of tools for your job. So that's the overall context. Thanks, Mike, for letting me to plug in here and exercise my webinar muscles. Been a while.
Yeah, great, John. Thanks for always good to hear you on these things. As usual, we try to get a finger on the pulse of our audience here. So we have a poll for you that I'm going to launch right now. First one is, what is your role in using Power BI? Are you an ELT, ETL developer, a power user, a consumer, or a manager/executive? So go ahead and get your votes in there. And the results are, about a third of you are ETL, ELT developers, a little more power users. Only a small portion are consumers, and the rest of y'all are managers or executives. So yeah, that looks about the kind of the pyramid there. Great, thank you for that information. And then the second poll that we have is, how are you currently ingesting data into Power BI if you're using it? Are you pulling it from an enterprise data warehouse? Or I guess that would include, if you have an ODS or anything akin to a data warehouse, data mart, et cetera, et cetera. Are you leveraging Power Query and pulling in disparate data sources or not? Are you using analysis services cubes? Are you pulling it from the cloud, like a data lake, Databricks, Snowflake, something like that? Streaming data, or do you have another way of doing that? So go ahead and get those votes in. Okay, I'm going to close it, share the results. So yeah, most of you all are close to 2/3 pulling it from a data warehouse of some sort. And then kind of the next bigger one is Power Query. So not super surprising there. I thought we'd see more analysis services in there. And cloud looks like a little piece, and then the rest is other. So that's interesting. I thought there'd be more of a uniform spread across those. Great. Well, thank you for providing your insights there and making this session interactive. So with that, we're going to jump into the heart of the presentation. I'm going to hand the floor over to Andy, who's going to go through this topic. Andy, floor is yours.
And let's get right to it. Ingesting data into Power BI, what are the choices? And first choice is obviously when you bring data into Power BI desktop, I'm going to start with Power Query, and that's the personal Power BI right away. And then we're going to move on up into the more complex and more enterprise level as we go. I will explain two acronyms that you'll see often in terms of bringing data into anything. And we are going to talk about ETL and ELT, which is going to be transforming data before it even gets into Power BI. So there's ETL is extract, transform, and load. So there's transformations in between the extract and loading portion, and then just kind of switching it around to extract, load, and transform, which means take the data, move it into an environment, and then do your transformations on that. But similar in what it accomplishes. You're moving data, you're transforming data, you're preparing and combining data and getting ready to pull it into Power BI. We're talking about the Microsoft platform today. So what is the right tool for the job? There's a lot of different things to weigh when you're choosing the right way to create an ETL or ELT platform. What's right for budget, what's right for the people that you have working for your organization. So the complexity that's involved, what's the scalability, what's my data look like this year, what's it look like 2 years from now. And at the end, we do have a decision matrix that weighs some of these different options for each one of the tools. All right, and this this presentation is going to be very technical. We're going to show a bit of each of these technologies, and we'll start with Power Query as you bring data into Power BI directly. Power BI data flows, which is a one-off from Power Query in desktop. It's Power Query in the cloud, and it allows you to save data. Integration services, or better known as SSIS, is calling it a legacy tool at this point. Came out in 2005. It comes with SQL Server and is a pretty hefty ETL tool built in free into SQL Server. And there's a lot of work that's been done out there in SSIS. What's its future, and how can it be brought into the newer platforms? We'll talk about Stream Analytics. This is going to be a different form of working with data. It's working with streaming data. Two options of bringing data into Power BI directly so you can see it happening at the time, and then also bringing it into your data lake. So one stream that splits and populates both of those. And then Azure Data Factory, which is Microsoft's now new, I wouldn't call it new anymore, but it's the platform going forward. It's a cloud platform. And we're going to demo a fairly new technology called Mapping Data Flows, which is a GUI-based tool that is sort of replacing SSIS. All right, so let's get into Power Query, and this is your personal BI. You've got Power BI Desktop. It's a free download from Microsoft. You open it up and you want to bring data in, and that's what you're using right now is Power Query Editor. So you bring data into Power BI Desktop, and then from there you bring it into the model. All right, so there's many built-in connectors that Microsoft has put in there. We're going to touch upon that. It shows some transformations. You can append and merge tables. You can create new columns, etc. It doesn't persist the data. This is the first important piece that I think we should talk about with Power Query Editor. It brings data into Power BI, but then it goes straight into the model. It doesn't save the data at the end of its transformations. It just moves it into the model, and from there you can save the model, which has other things involved with it, DAX expressions, which are real-time querying that goes on when you're using the reports and dashboards. So it doesn't actually save the data after you get done with it in Power BI itself. And that's an important piece that we'll talk about in the next tool after this. It does use the M language. It is a sequential data transformation language. It was invented for this specific purpose of this tool. It brings each step that you create in a transformation, it does it sequentially so that you'll have a way to go back and change it and undo it and see how it's working within the editor. So let's get right to Power Query. I'm gonna start to talk. We have a database project here. So for Power BI Desktop, we created reports and dashboards on the Johns Hopkins coronavirus data. And we're using that to show what we did with Query Editor. And right now I have the Get Data. If you click on Get Data, this is what opens up, and it gives you an idea of all the different connectors that are available to the Power Query database. Oracle, IBM, Postgre, all the popular databases here, and the list goes down. You can see a lot of different connectors that can bring in different data. You have the Power Platform. You can bring in Power BI data sets, so data sets published up to Power BI service. You can have data flows, which is our next technology after that. We'll show that. And then the Azure platform itself. So an Azure SQL database, Azure Analysis Services in here, Azure Synapse is their data warehouse appliance, and many other forms, HD Insight, blob storage, and data lake storage, all available as connectors to bring data into Power BI. Now, when you're in Power BI Desktop, you want to go to Power BI Power Query Editor. Then you click on the Transform Data button here, and we've got it open already. And it brings you into this tool. Right? So this is a desktop tool. It's on your desktop right now. It's part of Power BI Desktop, and it just opens up a separate window. And you can bring in new data here with the window that I just showed you with new sources. And inside this environment, you can transform data. You can bring data in and then start doing stuff with it. So I'm going to show one of the tables here, fact country group. We had as source, it's a CSV file that came in. And you can see with the CSV file, you've got the headers in the first row. This next step here promotes the headers, all of which gets done for you automatically when you bring in a CSV file. So these first few steps are handled by the application itself. And then I can do certain things as I go along. You can add custom columns. Right? So in this particular one, if I double click this now, you can see what the GUI part of this is about. Right? So I wanted to create a geography key, which would be county, state, and country, which would be unique for a specific date in the Johns Hopkins data. So it's a simple piece here that puts these together. Other parts to this you can look at every time you do something. So if you add a custom column, and then at the end you see here we group the rows. So all right, so this here is just cleansing a particular field. So one of the fields to distinguish Essex, New York as opposed to Essex, New Jersey. A few things that you could do in here, and then grouping rows at the end, make sure that we are unique on the geography key and date, which the Johns Hopkins data is. And once this happens, it's in the background, it's creating script in the M language. So if I go to Advanced Editor, brings up, and this is what it looks like behind the scenes. So if you look at the geography key, that's this one right here. So if I look, it's got its own expression language that creates that table add column, uses replace value function, and then in each of these is the parameters inside the function. But for the most part, you don't need to know M language. You can use the GUI editor to do a lot of these transformations. But there are some people have really decided to really learn M to the best of their ability so that they can go above what the editor can do with the data. Then when you're ready, you hit close and apply, and that brings it back, brings the data back into the dashboards, back in here. And that's essentially the ideas of personal BI. You're subject matter expert, power user at a company. You're bringing data in and you're creating your own reports. You can publish them up to your Power BI service within the company, share it with other people. But for the most part, you are a single person doing a single job in bringing all that data in. Okay, so next up is Power Query is going to segue right into Power BI Dataflow. So one of the things about a subject matter expert who gets very good at Power Query Editor, the organizations were seeing that a lot of their own people were very good at creating these models in Power BI and using Power Query Editor to do a lot of the transformations, combining, conforming data, and then bringing it into these models and dashboards. But it's not reusable. Power Query Editor doesn't allow it to persist data in a particular form. So Microsoft wanted to utilize that, or Microsoft wanted to give a way for companies to utilize their expertise within it. So a lot of different power users, not really the ETL developer, someone who's gone to school for database, knows the different platforms, and then knows a lot of the high-end ETL tools. These are people that were hired to do analysis within the company and got very good at Power BI because that was part of their job. So how do you leverage this expertise with the rest of your company? And in Power BI Service, it allows you to now create Power BI data flows, and it uses the same interface that it uses Power Query as the interface to do so. So if we look at this next slide here, there's storage in the cloud that you get with your Power BI service. You can create these data flows using Power Query Editor and store these entities. And I call them entities, but they're tables. They're tables stored in the cloud, and they're stored combined into what's called a data flow. And then if someone wanted to use your work, they could create a data flow that brings in, say, 3 or 4 entities from your data flow, and then they can add another 3 or 4 entities to build their own data flow combined with your work. So it allows a platform of utilizing the good work people have done from a personal BI perspective, but now bringing it a step further. This is what you would call almost a poor man's ETL, and I wouldn't call it poor man, but there are a couple of use cases for doing so here. And just to take this one step further, once the data flows are created, it can then be ingested into Power BI, much in the same way it would as if it were a database table. So it's Power BI data flows. And one piece I do want to just touch upon here is the use cases for having a system like Power BI data flows, and why would you want to go that direction? You could have your whole ETL and your whole reports and dashboards all in one environment, Power BI Premium or Power BI Service. And within that environment, you can do all your transformations, all your entity creation, and have that ready to be ingested into Power BI. And then you have the reports developed, and you don't need to hire out a full department worth of developers. And the use case usually with this is for smaller companies that don't have that type of budget yet at this point, and also for large companies that have certain departments within the organization that want to be able to handle their own analytics without having to go to the national level or the corporate level. They want to be able to have a little more flexibility to do some data work before it gets to the point of if you've been there before, where you put a ticket in and 3 weeks later it goes by and they finally get to it, and then it's in test and QA, and 6 weeks later I finally get my field that was fairly easy to add. Now you have a much more agile approach to saying I need to add a field to this data flow, and I can go in and just do that. And then there needs to be some form of governance behind that, and I'll touch upon that as well. So let's demo Power BI data flows. All right, I'm going to come into service. I'm in my Power BI service, and let's see. That's the wrong one. Give me a second. Okay, and we have here, let me go back, too quick. Okay, so when you get into Power BI service, you have your workflow workspaces, and this particular workspace, you go to the all content here and see that. You also have this option here, hit data sets and data flows. And this particular one, Lunch and Learn 100, is developed before. And looking at what a data flow looks like, it just looks like tables here, right? That's what they're, and we've brought these tables in from AdventureWorks and also from a source, an Excel spreadsheet in SharePoint, and we brought them in as one data flow. Now, if I go here to edit, it's going to open up the Power Query editor in the cloud. So this is a cloud-based application. We're now in the cloud. It is in Power BI service, and it's not part of my desktop. I don't need desktop in order to create a data flow. But it looks familiar, right? The interface here is Power Query editor, and it has all of the same options that you can do in Power Query desktop. And it does use the language, the same thing, and it should look familiar. All right, so I have different tables here, and then you can see the applied steps over here, and then we can go into the advanced editor as well. And just to show a little more of the functionality of Power Query, I'm going to click on this fact budget table. And when I first brought this in, you have a table that's in a, promote the headers, go to this side. You have a table that's in a matrix form, and you'll see this a lot with budgeting, right? We've got, this is going to be on the AdventureWorks product category. So you got 3 product categories here for budgeting, the year 2013. And for each one of these months, you'll see across the top is the month. So there's a budget set out for each one of these across the month. Now it's a very flexible way of putting data in. So when you're in accounting and you're saying, I'm going to create a budget, you get into Excel, you have a matrix with the months across the top, categories down the side, and then you put the numbers in for each bucket. That's all well and good, but it doesn't help us in a dimensional model. So we have to do certain things here to try and make this a better dimensional model. And one of the things that is very easy to do in Power Query is unpivot, which is, if you ever had to wrangle with this with SQL Server and create a query, it's always, what do I have to put in this area here? And there is this query, but in Power Query, it's as simple as saying unpivot and base it on these rows. And what it did was it put the months down here now on in each row and for each category. And so now I can create a key. I need a key on the date value here. And, I need to create a date value essentially. And this key here is going to be my key to my category dimension. So again, if I move down to the bottom over here, you can see at this point, I've give it a second. There it is. And so now I've created a date key with a conditional column based off the month. I know it's the year 2013. I know it's the first of the month. So off that, I can create a conditional that derives that column. And so now I can connect to the date dimension and the product category dimension when I bring the data in. So I go back to my workspace here. I gotta close out of Query Editor. And this has already been developed, this part here. And you can see the effectiveness of bringing that in when I look at oh, sorry, I got back in. Hold on one second. Okay, so this is the resulting report. Based on that, I was able to now use a date dimension. So I have the months down here in a chart. I have both my values from the fact table, which came from the database, which is the sales amount, and then the budget amount, which came from my table. So now when you're able to merge the data together, and then it's done in the Power BI model where you set the relationships there. But now I can look at accessories, and you can see it's changing both the budget numbers and the sales amounts here at the same time. And so I can see that my sales were little bit below the budgets to start, but apparently this company did better as the year went on. And if I go to bikes, you can see it's a whole different number here. I think we're over $1 million. We're looking at bikes. So not only is the sales amount being changed by this, by the slicer here, but also the budget as well. So it's meaningful chart when you're able to integrate that data together. So Power BI Power Query Editor allows you that integration of the data. And then now with Power BI data flows, it allows you to store that data into a data flow in there. So if I was going to go now to Power BI Desktop and I wanted to get data, I can open it up and you can see one of my choices here is data flows. If I use the more here, this is going to bring up the original. Just want to be able to show everyone how to get from the original one. We need to give that one a second. So it has a category of Power BI platform, and you click on that, and that gets you to the option of data flows. So Power Platform, and then Power BI data flows, and I can connect here. And then it's going to bring up the data flows that I have. I'm signed in as my user. It knows right now it's going up to my Power BI service, and it's looking for any data flows that I've had managed.
So that's an important step, Andy, that we're not covering in this webinar, is that you pull those data flows in, and then there's a modeling aspect to it, right, where you're creating the relationships so that you can get to the presentation layer here. The point is just that you have these options via desktop and or the web to do a lot of powerful ingestion and transformation, and then store it either locally or on the web in the case of in Azure Data Lake in the case of data flows, and then leverage them in your visualizations.
Yes, absolutely, Michael. Good point. And this is where this demonstration stops. We're not going to go into creating the model at this point. But I just wanted to show that this is how it looks coming from here. It looks like tables. And when you bring it in, it's very similar to bringing it in from a database. All right. And the other point to just mention here is in the get data piece, the governance that comes with Power BI service now. So you can, part of the problem now with having people, subject matter experts, bringing their data into a platform that gets shared, is you want to make sure that it is that there is some sort of governance on it. So the data sets that get created and published will allow the organization to control that. So say you're in a big organization, but your department is controlling the data that gets put into your Power BI premium service. And when you have data sets, as we all do, we get a data set and I publish it up and I create some reports, but it's not finished yet. I'm still modeling it. I might have a certain workspace set aside, but it could be up in an area where it gets where the data sets are shared, and someone else would look at it and use it and say, I want to use this technology. And I would say, well, hold on a second, it's not ready yet. I'm still in the midst of working and testing on it. And so how do you have something that can at least govern this type of data? So as a developer, you can publish up your data sets and you can set it to be promoted. So if you feel really strong about it being a finished product, you can click on promoted, and it now tells everyone in the company that it is that you feel good about it, that the developer feels good about it. And the other one is certified. So if you are a Power BI admin and you have the admin privileges to certified data sets, and it should be coming up any second now.
That's a really important aspect, Andy. I mean, when you
I just wanted to
like what John was saying earlier with the from an enterprise level, the original BI tools, the old BI tools where you, like Cognos, where you modeled it and then published it, you didn't have to think about that stuff because it was vetted and curated, but
exactly,
it was also slow. And so now the Power BIs and the Tableaus of the world came along, and you had chaos with all these data models. So this is where Microsoft's really moved the needle, along with Tableau has done something very similar to introduce governance into these mode 2 type of tools by having the certified and promoted.
Exactly. So now if you're in that company or in that department, you know that if it's certified, that someone in your organization has said, yes, we've looked at it, we've certified it. And if it even is promoted and you want to use, you know, that, well, Andrew Kinnear made this, he's promoted it, he feels very strong about it. Certification admin hasn't got to it yet, but you may want to use it depending based on that.
Okay, it bubbles those up to the top and you know, gives you trust in the data, which is really important in terms of driving adoption and minimizing versions of the truth and making better decisions.
Exactly, and that's that sort of that poor man's ETL solution. As we have to add some stuff to it, we have to add governance. As you can see here, I showed some of the GUI features, the M language. Not going to get into the refresh, but you can schedule the refreshes on your data flows and the governance that we just looked at that was added, so that if you wanted to use Power BI Premium or Power BI Service, you can do everything within it and still have a fairly controlled environment. Okay, let's keep moving. Integration services, and I loved integration services. I got very good at this particular tool, and it is free with a SQL Server license. Uses Visual Studio for the development environment, and it's part of that whole tool set. So the source control and everything involved with an ETL system comes with it, and you have you're now looking at you're into the area now where you are an ETL developer. If you use SSIS, you're no longer the person who's hired to do analytics and advise on analysis, but you're really the person in the back room now. You're in an ETL department or a database department, data warehouse department, and your job and role is the ETL developer. And it is an on-prem Windows app. Now you can have a VM, a virtual machine in Azure, and install SQL Server. So you would have a Windows app essentially in the cloud that way. But it was created for on-prem purposes and also for data warehouse purposes. You know, it was at the time when data warehousing was the it technology in 2000s, and SSIS came out around 2005. Had a very good pipeline architecture, brought data into memory. While it was in memory, it did transformations on the data, and then it loaded out. And it was a pretty good tool for what it, especially for free, given that its competitors were Informatica and Talend. It was a pretty nice tool to include in SQL Server for free. All right, let's do a quick showcase on this, more of a showcase than a demo. But this is integration services to that same coronavirus project that we just showed. So we do some transformations before it even gets into Power Query. And we had to do some stuff to make the data coming in was cumulative numbers, and we had to find a way to say, well, if it was this on this day and it was this on the next day, what was the actual amount? So you're taking the difference there for each one of those county, state, and country date by date, and finding the differences. So I used this instead of Power Query Editor because it had more of that oomph in the tool set to do so, including SQL, which is used in the stored procedures. This control flow allows you to do two different streams here at the same time. So these don't have any connection in between. So when it runs, they both run at the same time. And you could do, this is executing a stored procedure. So a stored procedure I created in SQL Server. And it also has this tool called Dataflow. So a Dataflow task, if I open it up, looks like this. And you get to see data streaming through here as it comes through. And I even put here a data viewer. So as the data comes through this part and I wanted to see it during the run, that gives me some insight to the data for some good debugging. Is something not working out, I can take a look at a certain step in the data. So I'm going to take this, I'm just going to execute this task now. And we'll take a look at the data flow. Okay, and you can see the window opens up. That's this window right here. That's the data viewer that I created. And it's waiting for me. The pipeline's not moving at this point. It allows me to see the data at this point. So if I had some derived columns, which I do, then I can check to see if that, I was also doing a geography key deriving that here. So it lets you debug right in here. It's a very good, robust tool for that. And if I detach it, it allows it to go. And now you'll see that the numbers of the rows going through here. Okay, it's taking its time. It is running on my local machine, which is working against the GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar tool. So I will cancel out of here now. But you can see how the data flow works in that regard. You're reading, deriving, and then populating a destination. And integration services is sort of being sunsetted. I don't know if I'd call it that at this point, but Microsoft has moved all its energy into the cloud-based tools. This is a fairly robust tool as it is. They do keep adding a few things to it, especially cloud connectors and different things that might pop up, but it is something that they're not emphasizing anymore in terms of tool for ETL. It'll probably be around for some time, but their thoughts are into the cloud.
You've definitely moved up at that point from sort of your desktop power user type person to much more of an actual ETL person, because you're working in Visual Studio. You're able to do much more complex things, but there's a steep learning curve for that, or reasonably steep learning curve.
Sure. Yep. And now even steeper as we get into the more the cloud and the more enterprise level ETL functions that come about. And we're going to talk about Azure. Azure is the Microsoft platform, cloud platform, and some of the tools that are in it in order to bring data in. And Azure Stream Analytics is the streaming technology that works in tandem with Azure Event Hub. And you can bring data into your data lake and directly into Power BI as streaming data as well. It is for big data processing. Some of the examples you would see for this is police departments will stream license plate readers. So as cars go past, there's license plate readers that are taking pictures, and then they're sending that information right in. Social media, which we're going to see in a demo next, and other things that manufacturing in particular now has really become machines that do manufacturing. I worked for a gold mining company. It had these big machines 300 feet under the surface, and they were streaming up data on how efficiently they're running and the temperatures within the machines. If they felt one of the temperatures was rising, it could cause a part to break or whatever. And it was a 24/7 operation, so they needed to know the maintenance portion of it. They needed to know that their operators were being efficient because each time those machines went down or didn't perform well, then they lost money. So they were streaming this data up into a Power BI dashboard and watching it real time as it happened. So it is real-time data analysis, but there is the cold path to be considered as well. And this graphic here will show what we're going to do. So we're streaming data into a piece called the Event Hub here, which is really just an entryway into the cloud. It's going to go into a tool called Azure Stream Analytics, and it's going to have two different paths. That one stream is going to come in. One is going to go to Azure Data Lake Storage, and the other is going to go directly into Power BI and stream live. So the data that goes into the data lake can then be processed by big data tools. In this particular graphic, we have Azure Data Lake Analytics, which is a parallel processing engine that takes large amounts of data and then can do analytics over the large amount of files that are associated with it. So if we look at here, going into okay, this is a data lake that I've set up. So Azure Data Lake, we're now in the cloud, and as we come into this, it's a folder structure, data lake, and it's done so that it puts data in, or it handles streaming data in such a way that, and this started streaming last night, so I had just one day in the 11th month, the 19th, but I can go back here and let's pick an older year and show you what I'm trying to talk about. 2018, third month, 2018, let's say the 8th day, you can see that we were streaming data in here throughout. So every hour, a file gets created from the streaming data, and then it's just stored in your Azure Data Lake. But now, how are you going to look at this data? How are you going to do transformations on it if I wanted to look at all of 2018? It's in different folders, and it would be tough for something like integration services to take all that information from various folders in order to get down to the level where they're each at. And so these tools that were developed to handle that, I'm not going to show the tool today, but Azure Data Lake Analytics is one. Databricks, HD Insights, Spark. These are all tools that can handle files in that type of structure, handle them all at once and do a single query against all of them. So they're built for that type of analytics. And the other piece, find my way back. Okay, so the other piece is going into Power BI. Let's take a look how to set this up. So there's an event hub that gets set up. I don't want to go into that too much. It's really just a configuration. We have a C# console project, which takes in the keys. It takes in my Twitter. We're going to show Twitter data. So I need my Twitter account. I had to become a Twitter developer on their site, and they gave me a bunch of keys that I put into the config file here. And then I also had to put in the keys from the event hub into this program. And then when it started streaming data. And right here, it basically writes to the console every 20 seconds, how many different tweets that are happening here. So every 20 seconds, we see another row get put in. So it's 44, 646, and hopefully, there we go, 44, 661. 15 messages came in that 20-second stream. So every 20 seconds, it's pumping up stream data. Now, we need to connect that to like I mentioned in the config file, it goes to the event hub. And the event hub gets configured in Azure Stream Analytics. And this is what Azure Stream Analytics looks like. Again, we're in the cloud, it's a cloud application, and it tells you, or it asks for you to set up what your inputs are. So our inputs are coming from the event hub. Go back. You have to define the outputs, and here I define one for the data lake and one for the Power BI stream, so it goes directly into Power BI. You have a query mechanism, and this looks like SQL. It is SQL. Well, it has a couple of other functions added to it, but I have two different statements here that take the streaming data. You can see I'm looking at cosmetic companies, cosmetic brands. That's what I put into the app config file for the C# program. And so it's grabbing all tweets that have these keywords in it. And I'm taking these keywords from the text. And if it includes Dior, then it puts Dior in as the brand. So just a case statement here that creates a field called brand. And it has a number of different cosmetic companies here. And then one is the tweet count, which we'll summarize in Power BI. We added a timestamp here going into the data lake, so it would have a timestamp in the data. And if we go back to Data Explorer, and I'll go back up to 2020. This is the data that's streaming now. You can see that that query is going to create a file like this. And it's a CSV file. It is, it brings in, these are the tweets. You can see they're going to have Dior or something involved with Chanel that's involved with the keywords that were grabbed out of that program. And it gets stored in your data lake in this format. Now,
Andy, I want to be mindful of the time. We have about 9 minutes left to cover the rest of the material, so you might want to move along. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, good point. So let's go straight into the one with Power BI then at this point. So we have Power BI. Back here. Okay, so once it gets to Power BI, it created this Twitter DS data set. And from that data set, you could create a report, which I created a report because it's looking at that data. And then you have to pin it up to a dashboard. So if we're looking at the dashboard in Power BI, this dashboard is now live and it's going as the data goes up. So if we're looking here now, you see we just saw that the amount here is 43,000, and it started after this program started, so it's not quite in sync with it. But you'll see as this does its next uptick here, the differences will be exact. So 741, there was 8 added to 131, which gave us 139. It is, so as you saw there, it updated the console, and a split second later, it updated the chart itself. And each time that goes up, this chart here is also moving with it. So when the data changes, DR is at 983. Now let's take a look. Now they're at 989. So you can see that the chart is updating as well. That's your real-time streaming analytics, as also it's populating the data lake to do that. Okay, I've got one last technology to go. And this is Azure Data Factory. And Azure Data Factory is the premier technology for Microsoft at this point to bring data in, do your transformations, and then prepare it for ingestion into Power BI and other types of data analytics tools as well. So it's a browser-based Azure application, right? So we're talking cloud, just like Dataflow, it's a cloud application. And it's for ETL and ELT. The cost is use-based, so the more data you pull through, the more you're going to pay. So it allows you to scale without having to add servers and all this. Originally, it is a lift and shift technology, which means moving large data files into the cloud. Version 2 has recently added a number of GUI components to it, so you can run an SSIS package now as part of an Azure Data Factory pipeline. The data flows, this data flow is a different technology than what we saw before with Power BI service, but it has now a tool called data flows that mimics SSIS, so it's GUI-based data flows. And even wrangling data flows, to mention this, wrangling data flows is now that Power Query editor now in Azure Data Factory. So those that know Power Query editor can use it to create data flow in a pipeline. So it's continuously evolving. And it is enterprise level, so it's got all the bells and whistles, DevOps, so source control, moving stuff from test to QA to prod, alerting, scheduling, all of that involved with Azure Data Factory. Right? And it can manage multiple technologies. Just mentioned here, you can have an SSIS package. So if you're reutilizing something that you know works well and is very efficient, you can put that into the pipeline, and then use its other copy activities or execute SQL stored procedures, things like that, all cobbled together into an Azure data pipeline. Okay, so let me go and just demo this one quickly. And that's in the other window. So in Azure Data Factory itself, you'll see here that we have the development environment. I'm in the development environment now. And these are my pipelines. I can add a pipeline here and create a new pipeline. I have this pipeline created. And from here, you can add different things to it. So right now I have this folder open, but a number of things that you can add to it. In the general folder, you have your SSIS package, stored procedures, all the different things that you can add to it. In Data Lake Analytics that we just discussed, the uSQL programs that get created in Data Lake Analytics can be done here. Databricks, Azure Functions. A lot of people come into here with the copy data. So that was the lift and shift part of it, is the copy data. And then you can also add a data flow. And a data flow here, if I go to create data flow, it allows me to choose either a data flow, which is the sort of the replacement for SSIS in the cloud, or this wrangling data flow, which is still in preview, and it's the Power Query editor. What I've done here is created a data flow, just to give you an idea what that looks like. All right, the data comes in here. What we did is we were looking at the natural hierarchy in the AdventureWorks product data warehouse. So for product, they have category, and then subcategory, and then product, and that's a natural hierarchy. So instead of having 3 tables in my data warehouse, I want to have 1, which is a dim product, and I call it in the sink here, dim product new. And that, excuse me, that allows you to, well, let me just show you how this gets set. You could add in a source here, which is the product category table. And now with product subcategory, that's also a source. But now I want to use product subcategory to look up the product category. So subcategory has the product category key, and there's an equality here based on that. And once you have that set up, then you now have a data stream that includes this lookup cat here. Now this data stream includes both the subcat and the category. So it's like a merger, in this case, a left join lookup. And then this particular, with dim product now, I'm gonna have this look up this merge data set here. And with this particular lookup, we have sort of the same thing, but now we have the subcategory key in the product dimension, and it's gonna match to the subproduct category key in the lookup cats column. Right? So now we have that, and what we've added is essentially we're adding 2 fields to a table. And bring it down here. Okay, there's a mapping takes place. I have added these 2 fields to my output table, subcategory and category. And you can see I'm mapping the English product subcategory name to subcategory and English product category name to category. Okay, and with that, I know we're running out of time at this point.
I think we should jump back to the slides here and get to the summary. Thanks.
Sure. Okay, so in summary though, these tools all share the same fundamentals, right? They're looking at transforming data so that Power BI can produce useful analytics. So before it even gets to Power BI, with the exception of Power Query Editor and Desktop, you're doing, you're loading data, you're transforming data, you're preparing it so that Power BI can use it. And you've seen that in a number of different forms. We do have a decision matrix here that'd be part of the, if you go to the site, where the recording is, you'll see this decision matrix. It looks at the tools here across the top, a number of different options that you should look at when you're deciding to choose a tool to ingest into Power BI. And it is a continuously evolving stack of technologies. It is, Power Query Editor is now being added to Azure Data Factory. All right, it's still in preview. Just goes to show how they're constantly adding functionality and features as they see the industry going. And so it's a type of thing that will be around for a while. You'll be able to scale with it, and you'll be able to use it with your Power BI stack of technologies. Okay, and that's it. Mike. Thank you,
Andy. Yeah, that's it's complex and ever evolving. So that matrix that we're pointing into, we're going to probably enhance that some more. It's really just meant to be kind of a basic guide for giving you an overview, but as you can see, it's complex, and so we'd love to have that conversation with you around how to choose the best technology and the right tool for the job, if you will. Now, if you stick with us for just a few minutes, please put any questions that you have in the question pane, and as I said in the beginning, we'll post those via a response document on the along with the recording, since we're at the top of the hour here already. Or we're more than happy to, if you want to ping us, have a conversation with you offline. If you need help in your Power BI environment, we do offer Power BI assistance in many different ways, whether it's training. We have a great getting and transforming data with Power BI that dives into Power Query. We've got several offerings there, from desktop to enterprise, which where there's to help you get on the path to efficient, accurate, shareable dashboard reporting, or a bucket of hours. So if you need help and you're not quite sure how that might play out, of course, we can give you the support however you need it at whatever point in your BI journey you are at. We are the authority in business intelligence. We've been focused solely on BI bringing expertise across the entire BI stack. So that diagram that John was talking about at the beginning, from the back end all the way to the front end, and across multiple different BI platforms. So we focused on Microsoft today, but that also incorporates things like Cognos or Tableau and other expertise. We bring pragmatic experience to help you determine, design, and deliver the right architectural options and the right tool for the job based on your analytics needs, no matter how complex or diverse your environment is. Say you're running multiples of these tools. Our clients know us for providing clarity from the chaos of complex business requirements, disparate data sources, constantly moving targets, changing regulatory environments, and have made a name for ourselves because of our strength bridging the gap between IT and business users. We deliver solutions that give you access to reliable, analysis-ready data across your organization, enabling you to quickly and easily get answers at the point of impact in the form of the decisions you make and the actions you take. As sort of mentioned earlier, in the next slide, Andy, we offer a full spectrum of BI services. Our consultants are leading experts in the field of analytics with years of real-world pragmatic experience and experience advancing the state of the art. We're so confident in our team and our methodology that we back our projects with an industry-unique 100% money-back guarantee. And we've been doing this for a while. If you go to the next slide, Andy, we've been focused exclusively on BI for 20 plus years at this point, or 1,500 clients ranging from the Fortune 500 down to the mid-market, as you will likely recognize a lot of the logos on our NASCAR slide there, and many functional areas, lines of business, including the Office of Finance, Sales and Marketing, Manufacturing, Operations, HR, and IT. What's great about Senturus is that our team is both large enough to meet all of your business analytics needs, yet small enough to provide personalized attention. We invite you to go to senturus.com, to our resources page. That's again where you'll find all of our webinars, our upcoming events, and easily consumable blogs. And then I'd be remiss if you go to the next slide if we didn't talk about our complete BI training offerings across Cognos, Power BI, and Tableau. We offer multiple different modes ranging from instructor-led online courses to tailored group sessions, mentoring, and self-paced e-learning, and we can combine those and customize those in a way that will best benefit your organization. Great additional resources from Senturus. We've been committed to sharing our knowledge and expertise for well over a decade. And with that, we would normally get to the Q&A. Again, if you have questions, we do have some in the question pane. We will respond to those and post those online, along with the deck, which is already up there, and a recording, which we should have up before too long. And with that, we'll go to the last slide here, Andy. And of course, first I want to thank you, Andy, for a very meaty presentation, a lot of high wire demos there you did. Thanks for a great job. And I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to join us on this latest installment of the Knowledge Series. Sorry we ran a little bit late today, but hopefully you found the information valuable and helpful. And again, if we can help you with Power BI or anything business analytics related, we hope you'll reach out to us. You can find us on our website. If you still actually use your phone for making phone calls, we have a 888 number, and you can always reach us at info@senturus.com. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.